Gary took me in the other room, tied me up, and threw me in the box. I was basically told how well I performed sexually determined if I lived or if I died, basically. And then he raped me and put me back in the box. I prayed a lot in that box because I didn't think I was coming home.
I remember the first time I saw the box. I know what it's like, not knowing if you are going to live or die. He tied me up. He used a knife. The house was my box.
Simmons was accused of raping Wolf's girlfriend and imprisoning her inside this box.
I can relate to Brooke. Our stories are connected because the thing that we have in common is Gary.
I hate that somebody had to be murdered, traumatized and tortured. It could have all been prevented.
She could have stopped him. And she didn't. I would have put that away then. And I wouldn't have stopped until he was behind bars.
I felt guilty. I think the guilt that I felt was when it started affecting other people other than me, like Brooke. She has every right to be angry. I'm nervous to meet her. I need to look her in the eyes so she knows.
I got butterflies in my stomach. I'm nervous. My palms are sweating. My hands, my feet, they're full sweating. It's hard to breathe a little bit. I'm just nervous. I'm a nervous wreck.
This picture was taken at church with my first daughter with Gary. It's my son, my oldest daughter, and my second daughter, Gary and myself. I met Gary about 10 months after my first divorce. I had 2 children, with my first husband, and Gary was the groundskeeper at my kids' daycare. He's very sweet, kind to my kids. He smiled. He was the perfect stepdad. He was the perfect first-time father. The terror and fear had not yet started. We were all content. We were all peaceful. Gary started attending the church that I was attending. It was after Sunday school, and my pastor's wife, she had come to me. She said, "Lori, can I speak to you for a minute?" She says, "I love you. I want the very best for you and your little family." She says, "But Gary does not have an easy spirit." She says, "There is something there. It is not right." That conversation didn't take more than 20 seconds. And literally, that's all that was said. I didn't hold much merit to it because I didn't feel threatened in any way. But I remembered that statement when things started changing, when things started happening. If I would have heeded that warning, I would have not endured the things that I endured through the years. When we were dating, he was very considerate and loving and always wanted to show appreciation. But I guess his cockiness showed through a little bit. He says, "I'm going to marry you. I'm going to make a life with you." Our church would have sweetheart banquets. Couples would go have a dinner.
But we're not rushing anything.
I'm talking with the person, and I didn't even pay attention, and everybody just started getting quiet. Somebody at the end of the table kind of pointed. And I looked, and Gary was to my right, and he was on his knees. He proposed in front of all these people. I swear to you, you could have dropped a pin and heard it. And I told him, "Get up. This ain't happening. He wasn't disappointed. He was smiling. And he says, I'm not getting up. I'm not getting up until you say yes. All of the pressure was on me, so all of eyes were on me. His eyes never wavered. He was not moving until I said yes. And I said, okay, yes, get up. He puts the ring on my finger and he turns around, throws his arms up and says, she said yes, And I was mortified. And he leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. And he told me, I told you you'd say yes. That was just one more calculation. He did it knowing that I would say yes, just to stop it. Gary was my rebound. He was the person that I thought I needed. My rebound could have killed me. And not only me, it could have killed my children. This is the front part of the house. For a split second when you handed that to me, I got nervous. It was a little unsettling. The house still creeps me out. And I have not set foot in there in 27 years. You almost feel the evil that resonates there. That was supposed to be my safe haven. It wound up being a tomb for a person. It wound up being a prison for another one. The acts that happened in that house were evil. The evil in the house started with me. This is Gary and our first child. He was still very much the Gary that he had led me to believe he was. Still happy, still peaceful, still contented. The monster's not there yet. He didn't start changing until after I gave birth to our child. After my daughter was born, when he would want to be intimate, I told him, no, he can't. It's not time. It's too soon. You have to wait. And he said, that's not going to happen. There was no way that he was not having sex. That evening, he forced himself on me. That was the very first time Gary raped me. I was shocked that it happened. I did not have any idea that he was capable of that. I couldn't get in the shower fast enough. I could never use enough soap. I could never stay in the shower long enough. I felt dirty and I felt used. I wasn't quite sure on what happened, and I didn't even know if that was considered rape because we were married. I had already had one failed marriage. And now I am on marriage number 2. The only common denominator between those two was me. So something was wrong with me to drive these men to do what they did. It's easy to pass judgment on somebody and say, oh, well, if that was me, I would have left and never thought nothing about it. You can tell me all day long what you think you would do if you were put in a situation where you have been manipulated your entire relationship. It's easy to say, well, I would leave. But it's not as easy as people think it is. Gary had told me early on in our relationship that he loved to write short stories. He had like 40, 50 binders. And I remember reading stories, and I don't know if he let me read that to gauge my reaction or my interest in what he had written. The women in the books that he was writing about were sex slaves. And it was all about dominating women. I wasn't aware of how deep and dark his writings were. Deviant would be putting it very lightly. That's when I had learned that his taste for darker sexual activities was really dark. Each of them were stories that consisted of owning a sex slave. exploring different type of sexual avenues, from pouring wax on somebody, burning somebody, cutting somebody, sticking somebody in a box. If you did not arouse him in the manner which he was trying to seek in the book, then that person was killed off. And then he would start another story.
Hey, hon, dinner's almost ready.
I told him, that's not pleasure, that's torture. And he says, well, these are my fantasies. There's something that makes me tick. He said, I have secrets you know nothing about. At first, I didn't want to acknowledge that his mind could be that dark, but he tried to bring them to life with me. When I would stand up to him, there was no warning. There was no, you better stop, you better back down. There was nothing like that. He went in for the kill. And when I tell you that, he would choke me to the point to where I would pass out. He was so big, I swear to you, his fingers would touch behind my esophagus. And he would hold it there. He would hold it there until I passed out. When I had come to, we were in the bedroom. He had tied both my arms above my head, and both my feet to the bedpost. He was like standing to the left of me, and I didn't know what was going to happen. My heart was beating so fast, I just knew he could hear it.
Please stop.
I asked him, let me go. Please untie me. I'm not a fan of this. And he told me it was not about me. This was not about me.
Don't be selfish.
He was calm. He wasn't angry. I remember him blindfolding me. And I just remember being scared out of my mind. I could hear him walking, but I couldn't see what he was doing. And he just told me to pay close attention to my body. I didn't scream. I didn't squirm. I literally just held my breath and just waited for what was coming. He took a blade and he just kind of outlined my face, and he would go behind my ears, almost like he was peeling my face off. He just started outlining my body. He was a butcher. He worked in a butcher shop. His knives were razor sharp. If I would have flinched, it would have cut me. He was just tracing the outline of my body with his knife, and I was petrified. I thought I was dying that night. This was one of the fantasies that he had written about. If I made a noise, if I twitched or flinched a little bit, it aroused him. I could feel the arousal, and I could almost feel his pulse quicken with each time that I would moan or each time I would wince because of the fear that was building inside me. He enjoyed the discomfort. He enjoyed the pain and the agony that he was causing. That's what excited him, the fear that he instilled. I'm holding my breath and I'm not wanting to move. The stiller I became, the less he liked it. I stayed perfectly still. He kind of ripped the blindfold off really fast, And he said, well, this is not any fun anymore.
Ruined it.
He couldn't untie my restraints. He had to cut them. And I remember getting in the shower and turning on the shower and just sobbing. It got to the point to where it didn't take much to arouse him. It did not take much to set him off. I was definitely becoming afraid to be alone with him. I think it was like a legal aid service. And I had called them and it said, spoke to a lady and just told her about the abuse and about the sexual abuse and all that stuff. And she told me that in the state of Mississippi, you can't get divorced when you're pregnant. I said, well, I'm not pregnant, but the state of Mississippi required me to take a pregnancy test in order to proceed with me filing for a divorce. I took a pregnancy test and found out that I was pregnant. every avenue I took, every explanation I got, it was all in his favor. It was my job to prove the abuse. It was my job to supply them with evidence. There was no way for me to prove anything that happened. I had to stay put where I was for another year. I was devastated. So when I found out I was pregnant for the second time, it was just very, very stressful because I wanted out. I wanted this to be over. And I could not have, I had the potential of not living through that. And it wasn't only me, it was my kids, and it was, there wasn't just me. That I look back now and think the danger that I not only put myself in, but I put my children in, I put people in that I love. When my children were sick or anything, I would just use that just to keep us distant from him. We would go sleep in their bed or something like that, anything to avoid him. My first daughter, by Gary, was hospitalized. She became very, very sick. And we were there several days. Gary and my other two children were in Moss Point, and I shared custody with my ex, and it was his weekend to take the children. And he went and got our children. And while I was in the hospital with my daughter, my ex-husband came and told me that he needed to speak to me, and he had handed me some Polaroids.
You need to take a look at this.
The Polaroids were of children that had been beaten. And he told me that was my oldest two children. I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said that Gary had beat them. I was kind of in disbelief. It went from the top of their bottoms to, like the back of their knees. That wasn't just little welts or something. Those were deep black and blue bruises. So they were beat with a boat paddle and then the rod that you use to open and shut blinds. It turned my stomach. As a mom, my kids are who I live for. To know that I left them with somebody who would harm them scared me to death. He didn't deny it. He said he might have went too far. According to him, physical discipline and hard work never hurt nobody. He said, "I hit them a few times." I said, "No, you beat them. You didn't hit them." I said, "There is a difference between discipline and abuse. And if you don't know the difference, you have no business executing either one." My daughter told me that the reason it took so long for them to tell me was he had threatened them that he would kill me. He used their love for me in order to get them to submit to whatever he needed them to do. It haunts me. It haunts me to this day. Mind you, it's been how many years, but that's not the point. The point is, I was not there when it happened. He had already played out some of the stories in his books. I didn't want any of the other stories. I didn't want to become a statistic. Did not want to become one of his books. I didn't want to become one of his stories. One of the stories that Gary wrote was about a box. And it was for a person. I was in the kitchen when I heard this noise and this banging. I'm thinking, what are you doing? What is that? I seen he's got this huge box. I'm thinking, why do you need such a big box? Why do you need such a heavy box?
Gary?
And he said, "Oh, it's for my guns and for my knives. I want to make sure the kids don't get them." you need a case big enough to hide a body in for guns and knives? And I asked him, what knives and guns do you have? You know, I didn't know we had knives and guns. We don't have them yet. It had a lock on the outside, and whatever you put in was not coming out. And just as easily as he told me it was just the box, he just dismissed the conversation. Why would you need a box so big for guns and knives that you didn't have? Something else was going on. Something was much deeper concerning the box. I remember coming home and my son was coming out of the woods.
Honey?
And I asked him, why are you so sweaty? He said, I'm digging a hole. Gary told me to go out here and dig a hole and not to come back in until I had reached a certain depth or something like that. And I said, well, where's your sister? She's in the house. And I said, doing what? He said, Mom, I don't know what she's doing. I just know that I'm not allowed to go in the house. He was scared. Like he was picking and choosing his words very carefully. When I walked into the house, I had called for my daughter. She looked a little uncomfortable. She looked a little scattered. And I said, are you okay? She says, I'm fine. Just very short. And that was not like her. My son told me that, Mom, we need to talk. We need to go somewhere private. Well, the only private place I could think of would be the bathroom. So we went into the bathroom. My son was probably 11, maybe 12. And then my daughter was either 10 or 11. My daughter starts shaking. And I said, baby, what is wrong with you?
Lori!
Then just instantly, it literally sounded like the wall was going to fall in because Gary started beating on the doors. He beat the door so hard that the door frame come off in the bathroom.
Lori! Open this door! Open this door right now!
This is the very first time I'd ever heard him raise his voice. He just kept saying, you know, don't you say a word. Remember what I told you.
It's our secret, not hers!
His voice was full of hatred, of anger, of rage.
Open this door or I'll break it down!
You could feel the rage. It was almost like it radiated out of his body and vibrated everything in the vicinity.
Phenomenal!
It was extremely frightening.
Lori! Lori!
And they proceeded to tell me that Gary had been molesting her. It had happened more than once. I opened the door and I was livid. If there was anything within my reach that would have caused him physical pain, I would have used it. Everything that ever happened, every incident, every time he had put his hands around my throat, every time he threatened to harm my kids, that all came out in that moment. I could have killed him and never even thought a thing about it. I didn't know that was in me.
We're leaving.
I didn't know so much hurt and so much anger was built up that I had suppressed that for so long. I told my daughter that we have to go speak to the police. And he said, you got to be smarter than the system. And I had looked at him, what are you talking about? You know, what is that supposed to mean? And it was just like, I know what I'm doing and I'm going to get away with what I'm doing. There was not enough evidence to charge him with what had been done. It was his word against her word. I spoke to the manager for some domestic violence association. I told him I don't have a job. I'm literally left today. I have no place to go. I have no furniture. I had 2 diaper bags and 2 suitcases. And she got me into the apartment. We had no beds. We had nothing. I actually was able to rent furniture. Somebody gave me a TV and be able to set up the children's bedrooms to where they had a place to come. And, you know, that was their home and safe place. When I found the first device, it was almost in disbelief there was a tape recorder that was screwed into the wood of the sofa, and it was rolling. He had bugged my apartment. I hit play to see what he could hear, and he could hear me speaking to my children. He could hear what was playing on the TV. It was just as clear as I am speaking to you. He could hear everything that went on in my living room. I literally started from one end of my apartment, from the ceiling to the floor, and I went through everything. I get into the kitchen. There is a baby monitor on top of the china hutch. He was listening to the conversations that I would have either with my children or if I was on the phone. I get to my bedroom. I move my bed away from the wall, and there is a tape recorder screwed into the headboard of my bed. I was just sick and tired of being manipulated. I was sick and tired of being timid. I was sick and tired of being taken advantage of. I was sick and tired of him taking advantage of my kids, and it was going to stop if I had to stop him myself. I opened the tape recorders. I pulled all the cassettes out, and I cut them all up. I smashed everything. When I gave him the box, he was excited, like I was letting him in, like this was going to be some sort of social call or visit. And I remember him unwrapping that box, and his demeanor instantly changed, almost to the point to where you saw his eyes go black. It was absolutely terrifying. He looked in the box and he looked up at me, and I turned the phone around and showed there was 911 right there. All I had to do was dial. I'm poking the bear. I'm daring you to do something. He says, you know, I would never hurt you. I would hurt your children. I would hurt your girls. And I said, you have? He said, oh no. He said, I would hang them upside down by their ankles. I would pass a blowtorch over their body until their skin peeled. I would pull their skin off, and I would rub salt on their body and do it all over again. And I said, you understand, those girls are a part of you. You're talking about harming your children. His eyes glazed over. I'm telling you, it petrified me. And I am scared to the point to where I hear my heart beating. I break out in a sweat. But I closed the door and locked the door, probably the fastest I've ever done it. My heart was racing so bad, but I will never forget how empowered I felt. But it wasn't over. He was no longer hiding. He was no longer trying to pretend. I wasn't going to be safe until either he was killed or put in prison.
Hello, Lori. I guess it's time. I love you.
This is a picture of my 4 children with my brother Timothy. Timothy loved his nieces and nephews. In the summer of 1996, Timothy was 17. He had moved in with me for that summer so he could tend to his nephew and nieces to help me out. He had no problem wrestling with them. He had no problem throwing a ball or playing dolls. Timothy was young, and I didn't realize that his relationship with Gary was still intact. I would never think in a million years he would end up in the place that he is now. He is paying the price for not telling Gary no. So it was late at night, and Timothy and I were night owls, so we would stay up and we would watch a movie together, or we would just sit around and talk or drink coffee. And it was late. It was probably 11:30. I got a knock at the door. And we looked at each other because we were surprised. And Timothy goes and opens the door. And it's Gary. I did not know that they still spoke. I did not know that they even had a relationship.
Gary?
I didn't tell Timothy about what Gary did to me. And I could tell that Timmy was surprised because he said, what are you doing here? I saw Gary kind of motion him and he steps outside. He comes back in. Gary needs my help. I said, you have no business with that man.
Hey,
He walked over, he hugged me, kissed me, and he said, Gary said, I'll be back within the hour. I said, no good comes from being out this late at night. Gary was a grown man, a professional at manipulating. You can't dance with the devil and expect to walk out unscathed. It was probably 3:30, 4:30, and I got a little concerned. And then I called Gary's house because, he was the last person that I knew Timothy was with. Gary had an answering machine and I left a message.
Gary, pick up the phone.
And then I called Gary's home again.
Gary, answer the phone.
I think there was a total of 3 phone calls. And then the third time, the answer machine didn't pick up. The phone literally just rang and rang and rang. I literally just put the phone down and I just let it ring. It was about 10 after 8. Timothy walks through the door. He's not there. It's almost like he's checked out. I said, Timothy, I have got to go to work. I'm already late. And he just kind of nodded. By the time I got home, the police were already in my apartment. One of the police officers says, there was an incident in Moss Point. And I knew immediately it was at the house. I stop and I think, oh God, what has happened now? What has Gary done to my family now? I look at Timmy and he said, I had to do it. I had to help him because he threatened you and the girls.
Authorities say Simmons shot Wolf, cut up the body, and scattered it in a nearby bayou. Simmons also was accused of raping Wolf's girlfriend and imprisoning her inside this box.
From what I understand, it was a drug deal gone bad. Jeffrey Wolf had give Gary drugs to sell. Jeff came back to get the money that Gary owed him. Gary didn't have the money to give him. And somebody shot him. I don't know if it was Timothy that shot him. I don't know if it was Gary that shot him. From the time that Jeff was murdered and the time that Timothy was arrested, Jeff was dismembered. And then Timothy was arrested. Gary was on the run. That is still very hard for me to process. I mean, you are soulless. I don't know. There are no reasons for anything so evil. It's no longer cruel. That is downright 100% evil.
I was looking down when the gunshots went off. And when I looked up, Jeff fell. Gary took me in the other room, tied me up, and threw me in the box. And I was locked in there. I just kept praying to God. I was telling him, help me get out of here. I didn't want to die.
I understand her feelings. I lived her feelings. I could have been the one that was killed. I could have been the one that was put in the box. I can relate to the terror. I know what it's like to be tied up. I know what it's like not to know what's coming next. Not knowing if you are going to live or die. And although I was never put in the black box, the house was my box.
Gary would come in and take me out. And I was basically told, how will I perform sexually determined if I lived or if I died, basically. And then he raped me.
The moment that he laid eyes on her, he knew exactly what he was going to do to her. She was almost the reason the box was created, the box was made. She didn't know what made him tick. She didn't know what he was searching for. She knew that he was a monster. She knew that he killed her boyfriend. She knew that if she didn't do what she was told, she was next.
I fell asleep in the box. And when I woke up, I heard the phone ringing and it went to voicemail. And I was thinking in my mind, I was like, if you're ever gonna get out of here, now's the time.
Whether she knows this or not, the phone ringing that she heard the day that she escaped was me calling. I would love to look her in the eyes and commend her for her courage. And I know that probably means nothing because I mean nothing to her. I'm nothing to her, but I understand her.
I was very anxious and I was very nervous on my way over here for this interview. You know, I deal with PTSD, so I have flashbacks, I have nightmares. I am here today to get closure. For so long, I ran from this, and I ran from people that I thought were going to come and hurt me because I put their dad in prison. You know how many years of my life I lost? Running from this, hiding from this, doing drugs or substances or whatever to make the pain go away. I lost myself. Jeff and I just met. We were still in the honeymoon phase of our relationship where everything was perfect. I think about him a lot, like every day. I just think about, you know, what our life would have been like if Mississippi wouldn't have happened. I'm looking at a picture of Jeff. The last memories I have of him are being shot and falling to the ground. He was so young and beautiful and smart and funny. And I just feel like I was put there on purpose so that they didn't get away with it. Back in 1996, I was 18 years old. I was probably about 100 pounds soaking wet. I was tiny. I had long bleached blonde hair. I was just normal. We drove to Gary's house, which is in the country. It was dark, real dark. And we pull up and there's not a porch light on. So that kind of was like, why don't he have the porch light on? You know, he knows we're coming. We walked in the house and Gary was standing behind the bar and Jeff was standing right here and he was asking if we want anything to drink, blah, blah, blah.
You getting all right now? Yeah, you good.
And you didn't even feel no hostility. There was nothing. They're just talking.
You know, actually, I got a surprise for you.
I'm really not paying attention to what they're saying because that's their business. So I just stayed out of it. And that's when I heard the gunshots. I seen Jeffrey's chest blow out all over the blinds. And then he fell. And Timothy Milano was standing right there with the gun in his hands. And we didn't even know he was in the house. I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. That's
It's Timothy. Much older. Much older. He's in his 40s now. Such a long time have gone by, and, you know, he was a boy when he went in. And it's sad. I'm able sometimes to speak with him on the phone, but the last time I laid my eyes on him was outside my apartment when he was being taken away. I don't know if it was Timothy that shot him. I don't know if it was Gary that shot him. Jeff was just shot. I find that hard to believe that he played a part in that.
Jeff's directly in front of me, just like you are right now. But there's a table in between us. I was looking down when the gunshots went off. And when I looked up, Jeff fell. And Timothy Milano was standing behind him with the gun.
That is something very hard to hear. You know, I've already had one cold-blooded killer in my life. Do I actually need to? I think the situation that Timothy was in, he was in because of the threats that Gary made to him. Gary had basically threatened him, you will do what I tell you, or I'll kill your sister, or I'll kill your nieces, and he never thought twice about it. He was willing to sacrifice his life in order to save mine and my children's.
They shot him, and I'm freaked out. I was so scared. I thought for sure that Timothy was going to shoot me. And then Gary came over and grabbed me in a bear hug. Then he hog-tied me, and he gagged me, and he locked me in that box. It was the scariest moment of my life. I didn't know what they were going to do to me. I didn't think I was getting out of that box. It was dark, and you're just in there alone with your own thoughts and fears, and just praying for a way out. And that's when Gary came around. He took me out, and that's when he raped me. And I fell asleep in the box. I was in there so long. The phone is what woke me up. I heard the answering machine come on, and I knew nobody's there. And I had already gotten out of the knots. And I could get on my knees and put my back on the lid of the box. And I could use my legs as force to push. So I just kept pushing on it, and it broke. And I grabbed the butcher knife off the table. Because if they were coming in when I was going out, I was going to gut them. Period. But I would have crossed that line because they weren't going to kill me. I was not dying that day.
The police tell me that there is a massive manhunt. When all of this happened, they had Timothy, but they didn't have Gary. Gary was loose. Based on what I had learned that he had done to Jeffrey and Brooke, I don't think he would have had any reservation killing me. You know, he was losing grip of the reality. The monster was coming out of the cage that he had been locked away in. And then I get a package at work, and I open the box, and it's a VHS tape. I remember putting in the tape and sitting in a chair and literally taking a deep breath because I did not know what was on the tape. I didn't know what to expect. And I watched the tape.
Hello, Lori.
It was Gary.
How you doing today?
He was calm.
I guess it's a real mess, isn't it? To my way of thinking, I didn't have much of a choice. I mean, I already taken his money. There's no excuses. There's never been an excuse for any of the things that I've done. There's never been any excuses for the way I've treated you. I love you. I know that for a fact. I waited a long time to find somebody like you. And for a long time, you held me together. You held me up. I really don't think it had anything to do with you. Unless it was just the absence. You not being there. You never realize how close you are to the edge until you actually step over it. Then the fall is like nothing that you've ever felt before.
The edge, I believe, that Gary's talking about there is, you know, with all of the dark secrets that he wrote about, with all of the dark fantasies that he would fantasize about. I think his ultimate fantasy was murder. His ultimate fantasy was being so powerful that he took somebody's life.
I guess it's time.
But in the end, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be.
I love you.
He should have learned to be satisfied with the purity of just love instead of feeding the beast, instead of feeding the monster. When they arrested Gary, he was a few blocks from my office. If Brooke did not escape, Gary would have killed her. Brooke is the hero of this story. She is the reason that it ended. She is the reason that he was caught. She is the reason that he was stopped.
He haunts my dreams. There's evil right there. When I look at him, I see a rapist. I see a murderer. I see a sexual deviant. The state of Mississippi called me and told me that he was exhausted all his appeals and that they had a final execution date. And I had already seen Jeff die. I didn't want to see another person die. So I just decided against it. I thought I had destroyed his family. My testimony put him in prison. I thought his children were going to grow up and want to take revenge on the girl that put their dad away. I thought that, you know, maybe Gary and Lori were high school sweethearts and I just ruined their perfect marriage. I was terrified of Gary's family. I was running and hiding, changing my hair, changing, always changing, maybe thinking that I wouldn't look the same, that they couldn't find me. Because now I don't just have me to worry about, I have my children. And that's scary because if they get to my kids, it's a wrap. I think I was more in shock when y'all told me that Miss Lori wanted to speak with me. I don't really understand that. I wouldn't want to talk to somebody that my husband brutalized and hurt and that put my husband away. I was 18 years old. I am 45 now. I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. I'm tired of the aftermath of trauma. I want to heal. I want my power back. I want to know, are you going to hurt me? Are you going to come after me? You know, does the family hate me? I do not have a clue what to expect from Miss Lori. I'm going to be blindsided by something and I just don't know what it is. And I'm nervous wreck about it. Maybe I would ask her if there were any warning signs. You know, was he sick and twisted? Like, how dark was he? I want to know. I mean, did he hurt you? Did he beat you? Did he terrorize you? Did he hurt? Did he rape you? There had to be some sign somewhere that he was a sicko. There had to be.
So I have some clips from Lori's interview. Would you want to see the first one?
You're given a time frame to heal after you give birth to a baby, and Gary didn't want to wait that time. He said, that's not going to happen. That evening, he forced himself on me.
Did Gary rape you?
Yes, Gary did. That was the very first time Gary raped me. I hate that somebody had to be murdered. I hate that somebody had to be traumatized and tortured. It could have all been prevented.
She could have stopped him, and she didn't.
Do you empathize with Lori?
No,
Why?
because I would have put that away then. And I wouldn't have stopped until he was behind bars. I'm hoping that it is a whole bigger picture and it comes all together tomorrow, because right now I'm just angry. I know there's a lot more that I haven't seen yet, so I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but that's hard right now.
Gary had an incredible imagination. He wrote stories about sex slaves. He wrote stories about owning women, pouring wax on somebody, burning somebody, cutting somebody, sticking somebody in a box. And I said, well, that's not love. That's torture. He tried to bring them to life with me.
She knew the whole time. Why didn't you do anything about it? Why didn't you warn people? That makes me angry. I'm just blindsided right now. I knew he was a monster, and it only took one night for me to figure that out. They had multiple red flags and multiple chances to stop him, and they didn't. So far, what I see is all of that with Jeff and me could have been prevented if somebody would have just took a stand against him. I don't think I want to do this anymore. Okay, I got to get some air. Wow. The signs were all there. It's like the makings of a serial killer. My mind is going 9,000 miles an hour right now.
I fell asleep in the box. And when I woke up, I heard the phone ringing, and it went to voicemail. And I was thinking in my mind, I was like, if you're ever going to get out of here, now's the time. The answer machine picked up, and I left a message the third time that I called. The phone started ringing. I set the phone down and let it ring.
Was her calling?
It's ringing. Brooke is fighting for her life, trying to get out of that box. And the only way that Brooke knew that there was nobody in the house was because the phone kept ringing. I presented her
An
with an opportunity to free herself. It was up to her to do it. Not knowing that I was helping her.
That's a divine intervention if I've ever seen one. That phone call's the one that saved my life. I'll be forever grateful to her. I asked for clarity. I'm getting it.
What do you see in that picture?
That box. That turned my stomach. It made me shudder. I know that box could have been a tomb for Brooke. I admire Brooke. She is an amazing young woman. I know the terror I faced with him. Brooke is the hero of this story. She is the reason that it ended. She is the reason that he was caught. She is the reason that he was stopped.
I was a scared little girl who just did the right thing. I'm not a hero. I'm up. All these years, I thought that lady was going to come after me because she was so love her man kind of gal. Boy, my perception was kind of wrong, huh? Whew. I think I'm fixing to learn some more things. That's Timothy Milano's mugshot. I don't feel sorry for him 1 ounce. At any given moment, he could have stood up and said no. But he was a coward, and he let somebody influence him to murder Jeff. He belongs in hell. They should have executed him right along with Gary. I got butterflies in my stomach. I'm nervous. My palms are sweating. My hands, my feet, they're both sweating. It's hard to breathe a little bit. I'm just nervous. I'm a nervous wreck. I heard some of her story yesterday, and I'm just shocked with everything. It's just a lot of emotions. Happy, sad, scared, mad. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in right now.
She doesn't owe me anything, but I owe her everything. I felt guilty. I think the guilt that I felt was when it started affecting other people other than me, like Brooke. She has every right to be angry. I'm nervous to meet her. I have no idea if Brooke knows if Timmy's my brother or not. I need to look her in the eyes so she knows Brooke is my hero. Hi, Brooke. Hi, I'm Lori. I'm Brooke. Can I hug you? Sure. It's very nice to meet you, finally. Oh my goodness. This is so crazy. It's crazy. Oh, it's so nice to finally meet you. So you want to come in? Sure. Okay. I am so glad that you're sitting here right now. Mm-hmm. Because people don't understand. They don't understand trauma. Not like this. Nope. They don't understand. They're just like, oh, well, get over it. How do you get over something like that? You don't. You don't ever. It haunts your dreams, your days, the flashbacks, the blood, they don't get it. No. The things that you experienced, I understand. In your marriage to Mr. Gary Simmons, do you think that you saw his disease progress and progressing? Like his sickness, his stories, did they get sicker? I would see glimpses of it. Gary never drank or cussed or smoked or anything when I was married to him. He never raised his voice, but we could be talking the way you and I were talking, and he could literally just reach up and choke me out till I would pass out. And when I would come to, I would be tied up, and then whatever happened would happen. If I would go to the police or something, there would not be a bruise for me to show them. It would be his word against my word. When I left Gary, I had 4 kids. I was a single mom. I didn't have a job, but I knew I had to get out of there. Gary, I didn't know that he was abusing you and harming you and hurting your children. I didn't know any of that until yesterday. I'm sorry that you and your family had to endure all that. I owe you a debt of gratitude. You are my hero. You might not believe that, but you are. You accomplished in one night what I couldn't do in years.
I was never going to let him get away with what he did to me and
No,
to Jeff.
ma'am.
Never. I spent the last 30 years running from you and your children. I thought y'all were going to hurt me and that y'all hated me. Your kids, I thought they were going to grow up and hate me because I put their dad away.
Oh my goodness. And we have thanked God for you every day since you've escaped. You're my children's
You
hero.
had made my whole year like, you kind of make it okay now.
I have 4 children who are grown because of you. I am here today because of you.
I never looked at it that way.
I don't know if you know this or not, but Timothy is my baby brother.
Shut the You're kidding me, right?
No.
So now I put your husband and your brother in.
You didn't do anything.
I know. Wow. I didn't know that.
You didn't do anything.
And you're sitting here calling me a hero? I think I need a minute. I'm sorry that your brother is in prison. I'm sorry that your husband's dead.
I'm not.
You lost your brother.
My brother is in prison because of an action that he took. He could have chose not to. He had options and he chose wrong. And I'm sorry that he did that. I'm sorry for him. I'm sorry for what happened to Jeff.
I didn't know that Timmy was your brother. And it scares me. Because now I put your ex-husband and your brother in prison.
You didn't do it.
I know. But some people don't think right.
My family holds nothing against you. My parents don't hold anything against you. There's nobody in my life that holds anything against you.
Do you understand how long I have ran from y'all, not knowing this?
When I did my interview with Andrea, I didn't know about Timmy until Andrea told me. I didn't know that. I never read I never read anything.
You didn't know that Timmy shot him?
I was in complete denial. I didn't know that part of my brother.
Do you think that Gary talked Timmy into shooting Jeff?
Yes. And I do believe that Gary threatened him in some manner with harming probably me or one of the kids. Timothy said I was just going to go help him with the car, and he left. Well, 6 o'clock come, and he wasn't home. And I'm calling Gary's house, and I left a voicemail. I left another voicemail, and then just put the phone down.
You woke me up in the box. I had fallen asleep. I heard it. You saved my life. I didn't even know till yesterday that you were calling. They didn't say nothing in court. They didn't say nothing. I didn't know. You saved me and you didn't even know it. I fought evil that day and won. He practiced that to get to the point where he could murder somebody and cut them up. What is there that we don't know? You know, I don't believe that that was his first time because of the way that he handled me. He wasn't afraid. He was in control the whole time. He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was meticulous and thorough.
Yeah.
He was seasoned. He was a seasoned professional monster.
If Gary would have come back and she was in that box, she was going to die.
Yeah. But I think with time, it's going to be okay. Do you feel like the Mississippi Police Department, do you feel like they failed you?
Oh, on several occasions, yes.
When I seen the clips, I got angry at first. Because I was like, why didn't she put him away? This could have all been prevented.
Yeah.
But I know how hard it is.
My thing was, when I've gone to the authorities and, when I've gone to doctors and gone to people, and they didn't believe me, and
the crazy wife. Yeah, I get it.
And I'm thinking, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm. It's a shame that the authorities didn't put him away sooner for the things that he did to you and your children.
Yeah.
I think right now I am overwhelmed with emotion and new insight to what happened. It's like I could shed it off and just let it go. I think I'm done. I'm sorry that you went through all that.
I'm sorry you did.
Due to the trauma that I experienced, I have a hard time trusting people in any sense. So at first I was very untrusting and didn't believe her. But as I got to talking to her, I've been a hero to their family, the whole family, for a long time. And I didn't know that because I don't see myself as a hero. She filled in all the blanks, It makes those fears go away that I had for so long. She screamed out for help many times. Many times. And they didn't help her. And now it's time to heal. It's time to let it go and heal. Thank you for hearing my story. And thank you for everything, because y'all don't know how much this is changing my life right now. And I'm grateful. So thank you. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. It doesn't define me. I am Brooke Weber, period. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor of a violent crime, and we're going to make it through it.
It's nice to know she's as strong as she is. It's nice to know that you're not the only one that has survived something that's traumatic. What she's given me, is closure and a debt that I could never pay. It's one thing to read about somebody in the papers or watch something on TV or something, but to actually shake their hand and to look them in the eye or to hear their voice or to hug them and, to know she's real, to know that she's a fighter. We're going to be okay. I hate that she thought that we were after her. I don't like that so much of her time and effort was wasted on thinking somebody was after her. I can understand that, though. She was able to stop somebody that I could not. She was able to protect my children when I tried and failed. And I hate that it took this long to thank her. I just wanted people to understand that it's not as easy as it looks. You can't say that you could walk out or you would do something differently from what I did or from what Brooke did, because you weren't there. You weren't tortured or brutalized. If you were put in a situation that I was put in or that Brooke was put in, your outcome could have been different than what ours was. You might not have made it out alive the way we did.
The 5th of July, 1998, Manhattan, New York. 82-year-old Irene Silverman vanished, never to be seen again. She'd been brutally attacked in her home, tasered, then strangled, in a bid to fraudulently seize the title to her multi-million-dollar property.
It was an act of the most grotesque malevolence. They dumped the body in a dumpster. It is such a brutal act.
The two killers were a mother and son duo, 23-year-old Kenny Kimes and his 63-year-old mother, Sante. She was a con artist who would stop at nothing to keep her crimes under wraps.
Most of her victims were obstacles, as far as she was concerned, that needed to be got out of the way. There was something innately evil about her.
Over the course of 2 years, Sante Kimes coerced her son Kenny into committing 3 murders.
She transformed him into a really evil person like her. She was like a Black Widow, and he became that way too.
Even their own family were wary of them.
Mom has always been dangerous, but when Kenny became her partner, she became really dangerous.
Driven by greed, they duped innocent victims out of thousands of dollars and brutally killed 3 people to maximize their ill-gotten gains, making Sante and Kenny Kimes 2 of the world's most evil killers. Wealthy New York socialite Irene Silverman vanished on the 5th of July, 1998. Her killers, Sante and Kenny Kimes, had already been linked to crimes in 5 separate U.S. states, following a trail of fraud and suspected murder. Former NYPD detective Tom Hovergem was investigating Irene's murder.
They thought they were untouchable. They thought they were smarter than everyone else, especially Sante. Kenny physically did it, but she gave the orders. Make no mistake about it.
By sheer coincidence, on the same day as the murder of multi-million-dollar heiress Irene, the police already had a sting in place at a local hotel to capture the Kimes for other crimes they'd been linked to.
They later found out that they were being arrested for the bad check on the card, and that was a big relief to them. But little did they know we were also investigating them for Irene Silverman's murder.
The Elizabeth Taylor look-alike and master of disguise Sante Kimes fooled victims across the U.S. during her outlandish 43-year crime spree. She used her powers of persuasion to gate-crash parties with the rich and famous, including U.S. Vice President Gerald Ford.
She had at least 22 aliases, all kinds of different social security numbers, all kinds of different passports. She was a million faces. She lies so relentlessly to everyone. It's a complete construct.
She knew how to make you feel like the most important person in the world. It was fun. Everyone loved her. She was the life of the party. As evil as she is, my mom was a walking contradiction. Her nature's evil. And the problem was that she was good at it.
She was a coercively controlling manipulator. Some people, in going after that sense of power and that sense of control, will stop at nothing to achieve it.
Say, honey, give a smile. Jeez.
Sante Kimes' story begins on July the 24th, 1934, in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She was born Sandra Singers and had a brother and 2 sisters. It was the time of a global economic downturn, the Great Depression. Families like Sante's, who lived off the land, were struggling to feed themselves due to an intense drought in America's South.
There's a lot of poverty in society at this point in time. And this is something that she would always be very conscious of throughout her life. She came from quite a poor background. Her father was East Indian, her mother was a Dutch migrant, and it's said that she experienced quite a lot of racism. But it's very difficult to know what's true and what's fabrication, because this woman was good at creating histories that didn't exist.
Somehow they ended up in Los Angeles. And her father, my grandfather, was kind of a con artist too, from what we can think of now. He left my grandmother on the streets in LA, basically homeless, as far as we know. It was tough.
Shaunti used to steal from food stores. She claimed that was part of her survival strategy. She was very conscious early on of the huge disparity in wealth between people like her and people like the Hollywood set. And so she became very conscious early on of the need to achieve some kind of material wealth. And of course she became obsessed by it.
Desperate to escape her poverty, at the age of 13, Sante, or Sandra as she was baptized, was given a lucky break. An LA theatre owner took a shine to her and arranged for their childless sister to adopt Sante.
The story goes that actually her mother and her sister were quite happy to wave her off because she was quite a handful. And I think with this new mum and dad, she would have been doted on. So I think any kind of narcissism that was developing in her would have been exacerbated even more.
The young Sante was now living in Nevada and moving her way up in the world. Her adopted father had a well-paid job in the army, and she was focused on getting good grades at school to climb up the social ladder.
She was terrified of being poor. She was scarred by her childhood.
She's been described as quite pushy, quite overbearing, and it's said that she had only one female friend during her school days. And this female friend was somebody who really looked up to her. And this is quite significant for me, because when you have a case of somebody who is a narcissist, you often have a codependent.
With her friend Ruth, she decided to move back to California, where they enrolled in journalism at college. It was in Santa Barbara where Sante first tried her hand at fraud, using the name of Ruth's future father-in-law, Bruce.
Bruce started getting all these bills, and what Mom had done is gone down to the local department store and charged thousands of dollars to his name for makeup, perfumes, clothes, and stuff like that. And that was the first thing that I know of that made Mom thirst to what she really was.
On the 9th of May 1956, at the age of 21, Sante decided to marry her boyfriend Lee. But when he got a job as a lowly paid teacher, Sante filed for divorce after barely a year of marriage.
She was physically quite attractive, but she was very much a parasite. She would hook on to particular men, get what she wanted, and then she would just abandon them.
Sante now focused on finding the next man in her life who could take her up in the world. Just a few months after her first marriage ended, on the 9th of November 1957, she married an old high school sweetheart, Ed Walker.
My dad was kind of like that puppy. My dad was completely enamored with her. He was his entire life.
She wanted him to, quote, to better himself so that she could be better too. She spent extravagantly. I mean, she would spend $13,000 one Christmas on Christmas presents. He couldn't afford that. There was no way that in the end it wouldn't drive Ed to distraction.
Sante wanted to be more than an average suburban housewife. She wanted to exude wealth. So she began to reinvent herself, ditching her birth name Sandra to make herself sound more exotic.
Mom's name changed several times throughout her life. She started off as Sandy, and then she decided she wanted to be kind of French. somewhere along the lines it turned into Santee, and then she went to Sante.
In 1962, Sante found herself in a whole new role when their son Kent was born and she became mum. But even this didn't deter her from her grifting ways.
Just that time, she treated me like a king or prince and made me feel like the most important person in the world, you know, and her love was fierce. You know, so when you saw the bad stuff, well, maybe other families like that too. I didn't know. It's all that I knew.
Not long after Kent's arrival, the cracks in the marriage were beginning to show, and Sante had a string of affairs. With her spending sky high, she resorted to new ways of funding her lifestyle, making fraudulent insurance claims through arson.
One of my earliest memories, we pull up the driveway and there's fire engines all over the place and stuff. The house had burned to the ground. And I think that was the third or fourth fire. It pretty much destroyed my father. I mean, everything that he would do was successful, but she found a way to destroy it.
The local police would later nickname Sante the Dragon Lady because of the number of mysterious fires that were attached to her name. She'd moved with husband Ed and their young son Kent from Sacramento to escape the suspicions about the number of homes she'd burnt down.
What a wonderful scheme. You just keep on setting fire to places, you claim the insurance, you make more money. She knew exactly what she was doing and why she was doing it.
Because of Sante's obsessive need for material wealth, she also continued with another compulsive criminal pastime.
Mama always stole. I mean, there was always shoplifting involved. I mean, I was her little helper. I didn't know, you know, I was a kid. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but it's all I knew. That's Mama.
In 1966, she was arrested 3 times, in a 5-day period. She had no concept of right or wrong.
The police raided the family home and found credit cards that Sante had taken out under a number of fake aliases. She faced 17 charges of grand theft, but thanks to legal help provided by one of her boyfriends, she walked away with nothing more than a petty fine. Meanwhile, the affairs continued. For husband Ed, it was the final straw.
I remember there was this huge argument, and Mom was going crazy, and she actually threw a knife at him, and I saw it stick in his arm. There's times when he walked in the house and saw her and someone else's embraces. My parents divorced. It destroyed my father. He was a broken man, and he never fully recovered.
With nobody to rein her in, Sante's escapades escalated. On the odd occasion that she did get caught out, she would do whatever necessary to get out of her latest fix, even exploiting her own 7-year-old son.
Not too long after Mom and Dad split, I was sitting on the hood of the car, waiting for Mom. Mom came running out of the dress shop, and this lady was chasing her. And she said, "Get in the car, get in the car." The lady came up and actually grabbed Mom's arm. "You're shoplifting. We saw you put that dress in that bag." So what Mom did is she stood up for a minute. She didn't say a word. And she clenched her fist and roundhouses me and gets me right in the lip. Split my lip wide open. I still have a scar. Cops got there, and Mom starts screaming, "This bitch hit my son, this bitch hit my son." And long story short, the cops ended up arresting her for hitting me.
Now officially free and single, Sante was determined to climb the social ladder. To do this, she knew she had to marry into wealth.
We call those years Mom's search for a millionaire. I think we were broke. I mean, we were living in a nice house and stuff, but the refrigerator was bare. I mean, I grew up on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for a while. She'd give me lectures for hours and hours. Marry for money. You don't want to be broke. You know, that was her mantra.
Sante would use her looks to find herself her millionaire man.
My mother had a striking resemblance to Elizabeth Taylor, and she played it to the hilt. She was always made up, big black wig and stuff like that. Men were attracted to her. And she was the type of woman, if she walked into a room, she got everyone's attention. Everyone's.
Before long, she set her sights on 52-year-old Ken Kimes, a multi-million-dollar property developer who'd struck it rich by building a chain of motels across the U.S. He was 16 years Sante's senior.
Ken was worth, our estimates at the time, about $22 million. And this was in 1969, 1970. Okay, so that's, today's money, it's a lot more.
She's very manipulative in how she goes about landing him. So she finds out that his favourite colour is white, so she wears white all the time. She finds out that he likes gardenias, the flowers, so she has a perfume that smells of those flowers. So she's doing everything that she can to appear very alluring to this man.
Sante engineered a meeting with her newfound millionaire.
Ken was rather flattered. A friend, I think, warned him at one point. She's not up to much, she's got a very dodgy record, but Ken didn't mind. She became more and more controlling, and Ken Kimes fell into her web.
People regarded him as goofy.
He was a man who, in spite of his relative success, was obviously very unsure of himself. What the Kimes family didn't have that they really wanted was high-level status.
Sante preyed on these insecurities. She cemented her role as his lover by creating something that would boost his ego. She created a fictitious role for him as an ambassador. Sante grifted herself and Ken Kimes into a reception at the U.S. Presidential Guest House in Washington, D.C.
They're photographed with Vice President Gerald Ford, and then they'll go on to crash another 3 parties at other embassies. Only Sante. Only she could have got away with it.
In spite of her many talents, Ken seemed unwilling to commit to marriage. Now Sante was concerned about how she would get hold of his millions. She had competition, as Ken had children from his previous marriage. She disdainfully referred to them as the creeps.
They see her as a predatory gold digger, so it's going to be quite difficult for her to actually get access to Ken's money. What's the best way to get somebody's money? Well, it's to create an heir.
On the 24th of March 1975, Ken and Sante welcomed a son, Kenneth Kareem Kimes, known as Kenny, into the world. As he grew up, Sante kept him isolated. She used home tutors so that he didn't even have to go to school.
Kenny Kimes' early years would have been when he was completely enmeshed with his mother. Kenny almost becomes an extension of her, and there's very much a codependent relationship that emerges. So his existence, his identity, is very much premised on hers.
Kenny was the golden child. I loved him. I mean, he was a great little brother. We played and stuff. He was a great kid.
The first big change in the happy young Kenny was at the age of 10, when he witnessed his parents get arrested. On the 12th of July 1985, the FBI raided their Las Vegas home. Sante had been trafficking young Mexican girls across the border and imprisoning them in her home as slaves. Several had escaped, accusing Sante of extreme physical abuse. One of her so-called maids claimed she was attacked with an iron.
It became obvious that something much more dangerous and criminal was going on behind the facade of respectability and money. Rather sad, Ken Kimes, who was not young, gets charged with 15 counts of slavery. He did a deal with the prosecutors. He got a 3-year suspended prison sentence. He had to enter an alcoholic treatment program because it was perfectly obvious to the FBI that he was drunk a great deal of the time.
Sante, however, was sentenced to 5 years in jail. Free from his mother's influence for the first time, young Kenny started to experience a normal life. He was allowed to go to school and make friends with his peers. But by December 1989, after serving 3 years of her sentence, Sante was back home. She was quick to rein Kenny in.
The coercively controlling behaviour becomes much more focused. She gets him to leave school. If anything, it's even worse than it was before.
And it's at that point where the Kenny that grew up with me that I loved and was fun to be with, had the potential to being a good person, started to shift. And his disappointment and his anger and his rage was relentless. He was out of control.
At the age of 16, Kenny ran away from home. Sante sent his older brother, Kent, to stop him.
Got Kenny back home. And his attitude did not get better. He was still in the rages and stuff. But he did stay. You know, I thought I was doing the right thing, but, you know, I'll wonder every day if I let him go. Won't this be like today?
Sante and Ken had homes in various U.S. states, as well as Nassau in the Bahamas. The illusion was a life of luxury and class, but the reality was that everything had become very stressful for 77-year-old Ken, due to Sante's compulsive grifting. Suddenly, on the 28th of March 1994, he died from an aneurysm.
Now, Sante has another problem. She doesn't want the creeps from his first marriage to get any of the money that there is in the estate. And so nobody's told that he's died. She doesn't allow there to be a full autopsy. It's a very quick cremation.
Ken had died March 28th. Kenny did not find out about it until June. And what had happened is Mom convinced me not to tell Kenny. Not tell anyone knew. I'm so ashamed of myself that she's able to manipulate me to do that.
Shantae kept Ken financially alive for some time after his death by using his credit cards and trying to access his accounts.
But soon questions were being asked by an executive at Ken's offshore bank, Gulf Union. 55-year-old Syed Bilal Ahmed was concerned about the flurry of faxes requesting money transfers by his client Ken Kimes. Syed suspected they were fake.
He turned up in the Bahamas to investigate irregularities in Ken Senior's accounts. And of course, Shantae immediately recognized that he was an obstacle that needed to be removed.
On the 4th of September 1996, Sante and her son Kenny wined and dined the bank investigator at their favorite Nassau restaurant.
They eventually invited him back for coffee to the house, and that's when they fed the date rape drug into his drink, got him into a dozy state, and drowned him in the bath. The two of them took it in turns to hold him under the water. It's believed Kenny took the body and dropped it in the sea. However, the body has never been found.
As far as the police are concerned, he's simply a missing person. Yes, of course, the last two people to see Saeed alive are Sante and Kenny, but there is no blood evidence. There is nothing.
21-year-old Kenny was now fully committed to Sante's criminal ways, helping her carry out the ultimate of crimes, murder. They fled from the Bahamas to the Sunshine State of Florida.
Apparently they got a motorhome and they went zigzagged across the states, scamming as a matter of course as well.
The mother and son team embarked on a Bonnie and Clyde-style shoplifting crime spree until the 19th of May 1997, when Sante was apprehended in a department store. Kenny punched a policeman to let his mother escape, and he was arrested for the first time. The 22-year-old called his brother Kent.
I'm in jail. I was relieved. I was thankful for it. Maybe this is one thing that got him to stay straight, get him back on the right track, let him know its consequences. That didn't happen.
In the eyes of U.S. prosecutors, Kenny was a first-time offender and as such was treated leniently.
This teaches Kenny a very important lesson, that actually you can break the law and you can get away with it, and there will be no consequences for you. So this is something that is incredibly important.
By now, Sante's late husband's millions had been depleted, and what remained was mostly tied up in property. So, Sante and Kenny turned up flat broke at the door of Sante's eldest son, Kent.
It started to be more Mom and Kenny against me. They were becoming a team that just didn't feel right. But one time I walked into my office and Mom and Kenny were sitting there behind my desk, going through my drawers, and I said, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Mom and Kenny were getting tighter and tighter, and I was becoming the outsider.
The criminal twosome eventually left, but not before they'd identified their next scam. Back in 1992, Sante and husband Ken had transferred the deeds of their Las Vegas home to a family friend, David Kasdan, to avoid it being seized in a legal dispute.
David Kasdan was a 63-year-old New Yorker who had helped them out of a jam. He pretended to own it. At the same time, they got him to sign a quitclaim so that if ever they wanted it back again, they could get it back at once.
In January 1998, Sante used the property as collateral to borrow $280,000 in David's name. He opened up his mail to discover he had a new mortgage.
And then David found out that the house had burned down. The insurance companies were not going to cover it because they knew it was arson.
David reported the fraud to the bank and revealed Sante Kimes was behind it.
Well, Shantae's reaction to the David problem was the usual one, which was to remove the obstacle. Kenny, of course, knew immediately that that would be his job.
On the 13th of March, Kenny and an accomplice, a drifter called Sean, drove to LA and paid a visit to David's home in Granada Hills. Sean waited outside whilst Kenny knocked on his door.
David welcomed him into his house and said, "Would you like a coffee?" and went off to make coffee, at which point Kenny took a revolver, put it at the back of David's neck and fired. He was dead before he hit the floor.
Kenny returned to the accomplice, and together they loaded him into the back of David's own green Jaguar. They dumped David's body in a dumpster in an alley. It wasn't very long before he was discovered. Among the prime suspects in his murder were Sante and Kenny.
I mean, one of the really strange things about the David Kasdan murder is the absolute detachment that Kenny showed in actually doing the deed, because this person was not someone unknown to him, it was someone very well known to him. But what happened next was even more astonishing.
He sends flowers to his mother. It's almost as if this is celebratory. This is an act of approval seeking. It's like, "Hey mum, look what I did for you." And this really reinforces how strong that codependency was between this narcissist and her number two.
Instead of keeping a low profile, Sante was back to her old tricks. 2 weeks prior to David's murder, she'd purchased a car with a forged check. The dealership had now realized they'd been duped and filed charges. Warrants were issued for Sante and Kenny's arrests. Now they were on the run for 2 murders and fraud. They fled 2,800 miles in the stolen car to the East Coast. In the relative anonymity of the big city, New York, the partners in crime conjured up their next money-making scam.
Sante had been researching nice, comfortable apartments in New York. And she'd come across an 82-year-old widow called Irene Silverman, who had a house in East 65th Street in Manhattan, which she converted into really very comfortable suites.
This was a lady who was worth a lot of money. Property on the Upper East Side in the Central Park area is very, very expensive, in the tens of millions of dollars. And Sante wanted a piece of this.
Sante concocted another fake alias, Manny Guerin, who was looking for an apartment. This time her criminal protege, her 23-year-old son Kenny, would play the lead role.
Now, normally Irene likes very good references, but Kenny plays the classic con. I'll give you the $6,000 now. The implication being, if you don't ask too many questions. It takes less than 24 hours for him to place a bug in her apartment so that he and his mother can listen in to her telephone conversations. They want, by one hook or crook, to get her to sign over the mansion to them.
But from the outset, Irene seemed dubious about her new resident.
Irene Silverman was an incredibly smart woman. She noticed that he was able to evade the security cameras around the building. He kind of crept around, and she knew that he stood behind his door looking out through the peephole because she could see his feet underneath the door. She told people that she didn't like this guy.
After managing to purchase a copy of the deeds to the Manhattan mansion, Sante used her skills as a forger to fake Irene's signature on a deeds transfer.
The con began to take on full force. Sante dresses up as Irene to convince the clerk to notarise the document. It's a truly horrifying story.
The property was signed over to a corporation Sante had set up. Now that they had the paperwork, there was only Irene herself that remained in their way. On the 5th of July 1998, Kenny pounced and dragged his 82-year-old landlady into his apartment.
Sante tases her, rendering the poor woman utterly helpless. And then Kenny, ever keen to do his mother's bidding, strangles her. It was an act of the most grotesque malevolence. But yet further evidence of the extraordinary bond between mother and son.
Keen to please his mother, 23-year-old Kenny snuck Irene's all but 5-foot body into a duffel bag and drove it across the water into Hoboken, New Jersey, where he dumped her in a trash bin. The callous couple now had the wealthy socialite out of the way and the falsified deeds to her Manhattan townhouse. Their outlandish plan for Sante to fill the elderly millionaire's shoes appeared to be falling into place. Straight after the killing, they celebrated their latest scam.
They take themselves off to Trump Tower to have pastries and coffee. Kenny at one point reminisced and said, "These are the hands that have just been round the neck of Irene, and now they're round a cup of coffee." It is almost unbelievable. Inconceivable.
But for people who knew the New York socialite, her disappearance that Sunday afternoon was completely out of character.
She'd just completely gone off the radar. People were very quick to notice that. It was only a matter of hours that went by before somebody reported her missing to the police.
Soon, former NYPD detective Tom Hovergim was alerted by one of his patrolling officers.
Phone rang. I picked it up, and I had a patrol officer on the other end tell me about an elderly woman who is missing. The officer said that the staff was pretty insistent that she would never leave the townhouse, and she had difficulty walking, and if she did leave, she wouldn't leave by herself. So then it started to raise my suspicion a little bit more than the average missing person call.
When he arrived at Irene's home, Detective Hovergim was told about one of her new tenants, Manny Guerin, a.k.a. Kenny Kimes, who'd recently been acting strangely. The police even found him mentioned in Irene's notebook.
She knew something was not right with this guy. Irene made notes in regards to Kenny's behavior at the time and drawings, and even said that he looks like he should be in jail.
Meanwhile, a joint task force of the LAPD and FBI were pursuing the Kimes for the bad check on the stolen car, and as chief suspects for the murder of David Kasdan. They found a criminal associate of the Kimes, Stanley. He'd previously supplied them with illegal guns, and the deadly duo had recently been in contact with him again.
They had called and said, Stan, we want you to come out to New York. We have a beautiful townhouse that you're going to love. We're going to have you be the caretaker. We want you to change some locks in the place and get rid of everyone that's in the townhouse.
The police and the FBI approach Stanley and say, if you help us pin down Sante and Kenny, whom they now clearly have a firm view are killers, we'll cut you a deal.
By coincidence, on the same day as Irene's murder, the task force had set up a sting to arrest the Kimes.
Stan helps them lure Sante and Kenneth Kimes to this Hilton Hotel on 6th Avenue. One of the things he had to do to let the police know that they were there was tip his hat.
The police stood on alert, but there was no sign of Sante or Kenny. They finally arrived over 6 hours late after dumping Irene's body.
Stanley takes his hat off, which is a clue if these are the right people. So they're arrested.
Sante, who is carrying out a black bag at the time, throws the bag on the floor and says, "This isn't mine." And then Kenny reacts by wetting himself. They had killed Irene literally a few hours before. This was possibly the first time in their lives that they've been caught off guard.
In Sante's bag, they found 7 passports, 5 bank books, and numerous checks belonging to Irene. On Kenny, they found a forged social security card in Irene's name. The Kimes were taken into custody.
I think Kenny must have been feeling incredibly alone, like a fish out of water at this point in time, because he's separated from his mum. He's always looking for her to tell him what to do next. So he's feeling like his normal has just been tipped upside down.
At this stage, the investigators hadn't realized the significance of the paperwork belonging to Irene Silverman that they'd found on the Kimes. That is until the New York police team investigating Irene's disappearance held a news conference.
A detective heard the news conference early in the morning, and he heard the name Irene Silverman. So then they immediately called up and said, "Hey, I think we have a couple of people here you might want to speak to."
Now the police knew that Kenny Kimes and the mysterious Manny Guerin were one and the same. Irene's staff identified Kenny as Manny in a police lineup, and detectives obtained a search warrant for his apartment.
When we went in, we found a shower curtain was missing. We found several wigs. We also found a drug that is used to, they call it the date rape drug. It's used to knock people out. We also found papers with Irene Silverman's signature on it. Someone was practicing her signature. We found a to-do list written by Sante Kimes. Duct tape, rope, garbage bags. We were hoping Irene was still alive, but we had our doubts at that point. In the bag that they checked at the Plaza Hotel, we finally found the motive. It's a forged deed to Irene Silverman's townhouse. It was a huge piece of evidence.
Now that they had conclusively linked the Kimes to Irene Silverman, Detective Hovergim questioned 23-year-old Kenny.
I was talking about poor Irene and her missing and how her staff misses her. And I was trying to play on his emotions, trying to get him to feel sorry for her. At one point, I thought I had him. He started to tear up, he started to slouch, and I thought, this is it, he's gonna spill. Then all of a sudden, in snap of a finger, he became stone cold. Rigid, sat up, stone cold, and said, "I have no comment." That was it, he was done.
Even though Irene's body was never found, on the 16th of December 1998, at Manhattan Criminal Court, Sante and Kenny Kimes faced a total of 84 charges, including Irene's murder. It was a media circus, and Sante reveled in the spotlight. She seized the chance for yet another performance.
She went on 60 Minutes. She went on another news show and proclaimed her innocence. And it was so over the top. It just was ridiculous. Crying, carrying on. As God is my witness, we would never do anything like that. Why would we murder a sweet old woman?
The prosecution were missing one crucial piece of evidence, Irene's body.
We had a homicide without a body and all circumstantial evidence, but that circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. We had everything we needed. We just didn't have the body. I think we were all a bit nervous, but we knew we'd get a conviction. I mean, if you sat on a jury and listened to the presentation from the district attorney's office, without a doubt, these two people killed Irene Silverman.
Sante was finally convicted and sentenced to 120 years in prison. Kenny was given 125.
We were ecstatic. The only downside is that we never found Irene. I still feel bad about that to this day. But we got a conviction, and that was amazing.
But the story didn't end there. New evidence found during the search for Irene had allowed a case to be built against the duo for the murder of their second victim, David Kasdan. They were to be extradited to Los Angeles, where they could face the death penalty if found guilty.
Kenny is desperate that his mother shouldn't face the death penalty. In March 2001, he is transferred to California. Kenny decides the only way he can save his mother is to turn against her.
As part of a plea bargain deal, in order to avoid the death penalty, Kenny Kimes confessed to the earlier murders of Syed Bilal Ahmed and David Kasdan. Mother and son were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Their victims finally saw justice.
The sentencing judge in California described Sante as one of the most evil individuals that she had ever encountered in her years on the bench. And I think that phrase can be applied to both of them. They were both evil individuals.
Almost 10 years later, on the 19th of May 2014, Sante Kimes died in prison. She was 79 years old. Even up to the end, she denied everything.
She was innocent in her mind the day she died. Never remorseful for any of her actions.
Recently, her son, Kenny, however, has begun to show remorse.
He understands, what pain he caused people by taking away people he loved because he lost someone he loved and stuff. So I think Kenny finally gets it. Far too late. I have too much respect for the people who've been hurt by them to call him a victim. He is evil. That's why I hope he never gets out of prison.
They brutally killed two men who got in the way of their money-making scams. They conned and duped innocent victims out of thousands of dollars. They strangled an 82-year-old in order to steal her multi-million-dollar property. That's what makes Sante and Kenny Kimes two of the world's most evil killers.
I blame myself for what happened. The coroner says it wasn't my fault. The police said if it hadn't been that night, it would have been another night and I wouldn't have been able to stop it. But they only died because he wanted to punish me. I'm angry. I'm broken. It is just torture. I don't want anybody to have to live the way I do. I don't live, I exist.
So let's...
Just give me a minute.
At first glance, an ordinary family house, but what happened here last night destroyed lives.
I will not speak his name. To call him by his name is to give him a presence. And he doesn't deserve a presence in this world.
There is a palpable sense of shock in this quiet residential street.
I'm not going to call him a man because he wasn't a man. He was just pure evil.
After the Sykes had divorced, Father Darren became vengeful.
No one could have anticipated what followed.
I despise him for what he's done. Everybody eventually started to see who he was, but it was too late by then. This photograph here was taken on our wedding day, and he got quite emotional and started crying, saying he was so happy and that he would love me forever. At that moment, we were happy, and then from that moment, things started to change. And I just feel sad for the younger me in this photograph. Little did I know what was to come. What started out as a fairy tale wedding turned into a nightmare. And thinking about it now, I feel slightly sick because he turned into a monster. How he turned from a prince to a monster in such a short time was scary. I first met Darren on the 19th of October in 1996 at a store opening. We both worked for the same company. He was a salesman. My first impressions of him was that he was arrogant and very self-confident. He was asking me out and it was like, not really interested, don't really want to meet you again, thanks but no thanks type of thing. And then the red rose came the next day and it said, please go out with me. The next day another red rose came and he sent a red rose for 3 weeks. I thought, wow, he must be really, really, really keen to send a rose for 3 weeks. And people were saying, oh, my boyfriend doesn't do that. I wish my boyfriend did that. And everybody was saying at the time, wow, he must really love you. Everybody thought he was a good guy. And I said I would go out with him.
Hi, Darren.
The way he hooked me in was with the attention. Darren bombarded me with love and tokens of gestures of affection. Every other week he'd send a bouquet of flowers. He was sending all these extravagant gifts. That's a warning sign. Now, with domestic abuse training, they now term it as love bombing. This is the first sign of their obsession. Makes you feel a little bit more special than normal. And that's a dangerous feeling to have because it blinds you to everything else that's around you. It's like a spider that's weaving this web and then all of a sudden you're caught and you get snarled up in this web. That's the best way to describe it. He wanted control of everything. He would look at my emails. He would start going through my phone. I came home from work and there was a letter on the side and it had been opened.
Did you read my mail?
And I said, that's actually addressed to me. And he said, well, there's no secrets between us.
What's the problem? You trying to hide something from me?
I think he snooped because he wanted to own every aspect of my life. Nothing was just mine. And it got to a point where you feel like your every move is being monitored. I'd turn up at work and half an hour later the phone would ring.
This is Claire.
And it would be him on the phone just checking that you're okay.
Oh, that's sweet.
Then an hour later, the phone would ring again, and it would be him saying something like, "Oh, I just want to hear your voice. Oh, I just want to tell you that I love you."
I actually need to get back to work, so I'll talk to you tonight.
And by the end, I was having 40 phone calls a day. What comes across as very caring and very loving at the start starts to become very oppressive, very intimidating. And you feel like not one single moment of the day is yours because you're just being tracked all day long. I realised that spying on me was getting out of control. When I found out that he was talking to my colleagues behind my back, I felt like I was being spied on. Like my whole life was being monitored. I wanted him to realise that his behaviour wasn't normal.
But he didn't see anything wrong with what he was doing.
It seemed like wherever I was, he was there. If I had a day off and I was meeting somebody for a coffee, he'd turn up. I was going out with the girls and I got ready to go and he said, "Oh, where are you going?" So I told him where we were going. We went to the pub, we got the wine, we were talking, and he just turned up and sat down.
Hello, ladies.
And like all my friends were kind of looking and it was like, this is a girls' night. You're a guy. What are you doing?
Darren, what are you doing here?
He'd sit there as if nothing was wrong.
Just missed you is all.
At first, my friends thought he must really love you. But then after he turned up at a girls' night, they started to view things differently. My friends withdrew and felt like they couldn't talk about what they wanted to talk about that night. They just stopped inviting me along, stopped including me in things.
No one wants another drink.
And looking back, that's another warning sign that they're starting to isolate you from your friends. This is how it starts, and you don't even realise that the abuse has started.
I'm sorry. I didn't think he would just show up.
It doesn't take much to start feeling those old feelings again. It doesn't take much for me to feel useless and worthless. Abuse doesn't stay with the abuser. It stays with the abused. And you carry those feelings with you always. New Year's Eve was when things really changed between us. That was the first time that I saw what he was capable of. We were going out for a meal with my mum and dad. And then an argument started.
Why are you wearing that?
And these insults are being hurled at you. Very personal insults. I had just about had enough. And I just flipped and I said, "I'm leaving. I've had enough."
You know what? I'm going by myself.
So he went and locked the door so that I couldn't leave the house. And that then made me realise I was trapped. I knew when he locked me in that it wasn't going to end well.
You're not going anywhere.
It was like a red mist would come over his face and there was a twist to it that looked evil. To see that was scary. It's almost like he had a split personality. And he punched me on my arm here and there was a big bruise. I was angry that he'd hurt me and shocked as well. By this time I was thinking, right, I'd just rather cancel tonight.
You know what? Let's just forget the whole thing.
But he said, "No, you want to go out with your parents, so we're going out."
Now go upstairs and get changed.
So we went out that night and my dad immediately picked up on the bruise. But I said I'd walked into the banister of the stairs. And that was the first time that I'd not been honest with my dad. I wish now that I'd told him the truth. But you cover up for people and you cover up for your own humiliation. He started being really pushy, wanting it all the time. It was like another thing that was on overdrive. Every night he'd be wanting relations, and it's like, you don't want to have relations with somebody when they've made you feel like a piece of dirt or when they've hurt you.
What are you doing?
What do you think I'm doing?
No, Darren.
It's invading your body. And you should be allowed to say no. But he didn't understand the word no.
I said no.
I would say no, and he'd carry on anyway. And there were many, many times he would force himself. You just feel used and dirty, and there's nothing worse or nothing more lonely. I used to lay there and then go in the shower, scrubbing myself in the shower because I don't feel clean. That feeling never goes away. You begin to feel like just an object. Looking back, it's another sign that things weren't right. Despite everything going wrong in the marriage, I didn't leave because the year that I probably would have left, I accidentally got pregnant with Jack. Perhaps Jack coming along would change him as a person, because people change when you have children. But it only made his behaviour worse rather than better. There was a day, and Jack was just 4 months old. Darren wanted some new furniture.
Oi, have a look at this.
And this had been going on for a long time, picking this furniture. All the decor was picked by him. They'd argued and argued and argued, and he was still saying he wanted the furniture that he wanted. So I just says, whatever.
Do what you want, I don't care.
He just lost his temper, and just like a child, picked up the heavy wooden chair and he just threw it across the room at me, and it hit me on my ankle.
Are you serious?
He was infuriated that I wasn't giving him the response that he wanted. Now, Jack was on the floor and it could have hit Jack. And it was a flashpoint for me, and I gave him an ultimatum and said, if you don't learn to control your temper, then I'm leaving and I'm taking Jack with me. I just walked out and went for a walk and walked and walked and walked. But I took Jack with me because I didn't trust him with Jack. And when I came back, he said, don't take Jack away from me again.
You will never take my son away from me. Do you understand?
And that was the first warning sign that he saw the children as a possession, and that he thought he was entitled to the children more than me. And the next day, flowers would arrive. The worse the arguments got, the more the flowers arrived. I hate flowers now. If somebody gives me some flowers, I don't associate them with nice things. I just see it as somebody who can't say sorry. He went on the anger management course, worked for a while, and then just slipped back into his old ways. Leopards don't change their spots. In March 2002, Jack was born, and 3 years later, Paul was born. And they were two perfectly beautiful children, most precious thing in the world. But when the children was young, as a father, he wasn't involved. As a family, we didn't really have happy family moments. When you look at that photograph, He's smiling in that photograph as if he's the proudest father on earth. But that happy look on his face didn't last. Evil lurked within and raised its head more and more. It was him that was the monster that couldn't be stopped and would never change. I think as a man and as a father, he was jealous of their talent and he was turning his spite and anger onto them. This was my 40th birthday. And there's Jack with his trumpet playing happy birthday to me. You can see in his eyes there that he's watching his dad. You can see the wary look on his face. And there's fear in those eyes. And that's because one day he wanted to do his practice, but his dad didn't want to hear him play his beautiful music. He wanted a television programme on, so he just took it out on Jack. His dad, out of spite, knocked his trumpet and made him cut his lip. And he ended up with blood running down his chin. This is Paul. That smile there, you can just see him lit up from the inside out. This was where he came alive. He just loved to run. In running, he was free. In running, he expressed himself. But one day, I was cooking tea, and then all of a sudden there was this hullabaloo, and Paul was crying, and he came into me, and he got red marks on his legs, and he says, "Dad's hurt me, Dad's hurt me." Darren had been twisting Paul's legs. He was supposedly play fighting.
We were just wrestling, having a little fun.
And because he was a runner, his father targeted his legs. Because if he twisted his legs and hurt his legs, he wouldn't be able to run.
You could have really hurt him.
So it was his way of spoiling Paul's passion. He was jealous of his own child. In the end, I said that he needed to back off from Paul and he needed to give him some space and he needed to stop bullying him. And he said, "I'm not a bully."
He needs to toughen up.
I felt like I couldn't even leave him with them on my days off because I didn't trust him. And what does that say about him as a father when I feel like I can't trust him to look after the children? Jack and Paul didn't trust their dad. They'd been hurt by him. They were on eggshells with him. If we were sat on a big sofa, I'd be sat on one side and the boys would be crushed in with me as far in as they could. And they get the comments, "Oh, you don't want to sit next to me then?" Well, why would you want to sit next to somebody who twists your legs? Or why would you want to sit next to somebody that makes your lip bleed? You wouldn't, would you?
What? I'm not good enough for you? Is that it?
They didn't want to be with him. It was me that had the bond with them. And he resented that bond because whenever they needed anything, it was me that they came to and not him. I don't want that photograph near me. That was the boys having an ice cream. As you can see on that picture, Paul's looking away He didn't want to sit next to his dad. There's a space between them. And you can tell that he's on edge. Jack's tolerating him, but if you look at his body language, he's closing off from his dad. He's certainly not snuggling in and doesn't look happy to be sat there. That photograph just makes me feel ill and angry. One evening, I was sat on the sofa and watching the news, and on the news came this report that a father in Wales had killed his children and then hung himself. And I was absolutely heartbroken for that mum.
That's horrible. That poor mother.
And I said, how could he have taken those children's lives? How can anybody do that?
Can you imagine?
And Darren's answer was, well, I understand why he did it. Because fathers aren't treated the same way as mothers. And I just went cold because the tone of voice, he completely believed what he was saying.
That is a horrible thing to say.
It's true.
And I said, how can you say that? And he said, well, they're not. He understood exactly why that father took his children's lives away. And I was appalled. Nobody's got the right to take a child's life away. I found it incredible that he could even contemplate that, let alone understand why he'd done it. That was another warning sign for me. It was almost like a premonition. I knew inside that the children would not be safe with him. The boys were asking to leave. I didn't have the money to leave, and I knew that if I left, he would have access to the children, and if I wasn't there, who was going to keep them safe? I had a responsibility to keep them safe. Final straw for me came in 2014. The abuse was extending to the boys, and I realised that I had to leave. One evening, Jack and I were upstairs, and their father was up there, and he was getting on at him for doing his homework.
Enough fooling about. You've got a report to finish.
Jack came out with a flippant remark, and the next thing I knew was his father lunging towards him with his fist. The force of the impact spun me around, and I fell down the stairs. And I realised that I could no longer stay. I knew I had to get out pretty quick because he could have locked the doors, he could have done anything. I just quickly scooped them up and said, go to the car, go to the car. And they just ran to the car, and I just said, that's it. That's it. It was just survival mode. I saw this as an escape. That's when the real abuse started. His behaviour went out of control. He stalked me. He sent text messages to my family, abusive messages, which was absolutely horrible. The day that my divorce came through, I was taking the boys out for a meal, basically to lift the mood a little bit. And then, as I walked out of the restaurant and got in the car, the tyre on the driver's side was down. And when I looked at it, there was a big slash in the tyre. And I just went cold because I knew who'd done that. And I went back into the restaurant and said, have you got any CCTV footage? And they went, no, we don't have cameras. So I didn't bother to report it to the police because I had no evidence. And it would have been a she said, he said situation which could have made things worse. So I let it go. But I knew that we were in danger. Obviously, I believed that contact was not in the boys' best interest, and I had to go to court to ensure that the boys were kept safe. I was sat in the waiting area, being intimidated by him. He was glaring at me across the room, and he was verbally shouting.
Are you happy now? I bet you think you've won.
He was saying that I was manipulative, I was a bitch. I should tell the boys that it's my fault that they're not seeing their dad. But there was one sentence that he said, and that was, "You will never have the children. You'll never have the boys."
You're not going to take them away from me. I promise you that.
I could see that his anger was escalating, but because there wasn't enough evidence of physical violence to stop him seeing the children completely, 5 hours access was granted. And when 5 hours non-supervised contact was issued, I almost fell to pieces. Given the behaviour in that courtroom, I knew that those children were in danger and I couldn't do anything about it. Nobody listened to the warning that I gave. Everybody thought he wasn't capable of murder, and I knew he was. On the 22nd of October, they had gone on an access visit to their father. The day started just like any other day. And as I dropped him off at school, I said to him, as I did every morning, "Love you." And they'd answer, "To infinity and beyond." They loved Toy Story. Those were the last words we spoke to each other in this world. Later on, I came home from work. I sat down. I just literally finished my tea, and there was a knock on the door. And I opened the door, and there was a policeman stood on the doorstep. We know each other. And when I came out, his face fell. And the first words I said was, "What has he done?" And the police officer said, "There's been an incident at the house." He said, "There's been a fire, and you need to come now with me. The boys are at the children's hospital." And that's all I knew.
At first glance, an ordinary family house, but what happened here last night destroyed lives. A father, Darren Sykes, was at home with his 2 sons when a blaze took hold of the property. Fire crews battled through the heat to find all 3 trapped.
And I remember we got to Sheffield Children's Hospital. I walked into this little room, and my head was saying, "This isn't happening." And my heart was screaming in pain. And the medic said, "Are you Jack and Paul's mum?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Come with me."
The blaze broke out at around 6:30 last night. Neighbours said at first they didn't realise anyone was in the house because Mr. Sykes's van wasn't parked outside. By the time firefighters arrived, they found the father and his 2 sons on the ground floor, and attempts were made to revive them.
I saw Paul, and I saw them doing CPR on him, and his little body was bouncing off the bed. And reality hit like a slap. One part of my brain was screaming, "That's my son." My 9-year-old little boy lying there having CPR. They looked at me and they said, "We're going to let him go now." And I said, no, you can't let him go." And they said, all we can do now is let him go. And they let me hold him in my arms. And I held him so tightly, his hair was wet with my tears. And I said, Paul, you can't leave. It's Mum, I'm here. And he looked at me and smiled. And then the light just went out of his eyes. And his beautiful blue eyes, they just went grey. And nothing was looking back. And the nurse came past and subtly closed his eyes. And then he just looked like he was sleeping. And to know that I would never hear his laugh, watch him run, have a future, and that I could only hold him as he died and told him that I loved him. I felt shame, pain, and I felt as if I'd physically been torn apart. The detective sergeant came from the family liaison unit and said that the fire had been set on purpose, it wasn't an accident. They told me that Jack had told the fireman that cradled him in his arms that his dad had done this.
Jack was found on the first floor. Conscious when he was taken to hospital, he told police, "My dad started the fire."
He'd set at least 14 separate fires. The property was barricaded and there was no way that the boys would have got out. He'd used a mattress to barricade the living room and a kitchen chair against the kitchen door to wedge that too.
After the Sykes had divorced, Father Darren became vengeful. Sykes locked the house, doused it in petrol, and set it alight.
Then they said to me, Jack's in the other bay if you want to come and see him. And they were running around and they were all sweating. And you could see on the faces the fear. I just lost one son and they were doing their damnedest to make sure that I didn't lose Jack too. This is 2 days after Jack was taken to Manchester to the paediatric intensive care burns unit. This is what I looked at for 5 days. And I'm sorry that I upset people when I show them these photos. But this is reality. This is real life. And this is what happened to my beautiful 12-year-old boy. He can't open his eyes, they're swollen and burnt. And he's on a ventilator because he's sedated. Most of his body was destroyed. He got these injuries from trying to rescue his brother and get out of a fire. And it kills me inside to keep showing this photograph. But people need to know the reality. This is what happens when people don't listen. I sat by this for 5 days. I couldn't do anything other than read to him and talk to him. Jack wasn't in pain there, he was sedated. But I hurt for him. And not being able to help him, I felt useless. And all I could do was pray. But it wasn't enough. The next day, he started to deteriorate. And if you watch medical programs and you see the line just go beep, that's exactly what happens. There was no heartbeat at all. The medics were devastated and they looked at me and I just waited for them to say it. and they called it. They told everybody to stop. And the room just went eerily quiet. All you could hear was the one machine with a single beat and then just a line going across. I held him in my arms, but I didn't ask him to stay like I did Paul. I just said, be at peace, I love you. He heard that I loved him, and I told him to be at peace now. And I held him, and then the detective came from Penistone, and he said, now we're looking at a double murder. And nobody touched me. Nobody went near me. And I just curled up on the floor in a ball because the pain was just too much. I was really angry because I wanted him to face what he'd done. They asked me to take responsibility for his body, and I refused. My ex-husband did what he did because he couldn't accept that he wasn't loved, he couldn't accept that he wasn't liked. But the real reason why he did this was to punish me. Those boys only died because of me. They were taken away because he knew he couldn't have them. And if he couldn't have them, then nobody else could have them. I had a tattoo done and had their ashes mingled with the ink. I wanted them close to my heart. So the only place to make sure they were close to my heart was to have a tattoo done on my chest. To infinity and back. These are the last words that we spoke to each other in this world, and they were spoken in love, and I have that love now etched forever next to my heart. The promise that I made to my two boys as they lay dying in my arms was that I wouldn't let this happen to another child. These laws need changing, and they need changing now. So I've challenged the government. We're having a new domestic abuse bill, which has now taken 4 years, and we still haven't got it through Parliament. And if I can change these laws in Jack and Paul's names, then their legacy will live on long after I'm not around. That's what I'm fighting for, to make sure the right decisions are made for the child. Not for the parents, for the child. Because they can't protect themselves. Nevertheless, I should have fought the courts more, and I have to live with those regrets. The thing I regret the most is not walking away. There were signs, and I should have left rather than stay and try to make the best of it. I wish he'd taken his own life and left the boys. I wish he'd taken mine and left the boys. But all I can do now is change the future. I can't change the past, but I can change the future. And that's what I'll keep trying to do.